Hello everyone, this is the final conference on the AYCH project. I'm Jose and I'm talking from Lugo, Spain. I'm in the same place where we had the first creative jam. I want to welcome you. Let's start.
Good morning and welcome to all of you that are accompanying us today in this AYCH results conference. Before starting, it will be interesting for those of you that doesn't want to appear to switch off your camera as this meeting is being recorded. It's also important for you to have a smooth follow of this meeting to search for the AYCH broadcast profile and pinning it up as is going to be the channel through we are going to share all the presentations and the speaker focus of the Zoom is going to appear. Regarding questions, I encourage you to write them down in the chat box of the Zoom call, and I will gather it till the end of the meeting, and we are going to ask those questions to the different kind of speakers. So today we are talking about the Atlantic Youth Creative Hubs project from Inter-Atlantic area, which began 4 years ago, taking the lead of doing something that was impossible for many people, which was to establish a network of different kind of experts, referral agents, and hubs in 4 countries of the Atlantic area, with the aim of promoting entrepreneurship among young people. This week, we have the Atlantic Youth Creative Hubs Youth Summit, which was an event aimed at providing young people the voice that they asked for, talking about different elements that are important for them and for helping them to bring a new future. They were the protagonists this week, and today we are going to focus on another protagonist of the AYCH project that have been really important for its development. Today we have some of those protagonists, some of those partners of the project, as well as we are missing some of them, like for example, Oli or Ellie, also Maria, Nick. But today we have also really important people to talk about their experience in the project and also the feeling that they have of this project going to its end. We are going to have 15 minutes presentations and talks, and at the end, Florent Oxony from l'École des Design is going to talk with us about the legacy of the project. And now I will like to give the floor to one of the women that has been really important for the AYCH project. He's an enthusiastic of education in all of its ways. He also lives in the south of the United Kingdom, and there are many things to acknowledge to her. But maybe the most important one would be her excuse me, her conciliatory desire, as he is the lead partner of the project, and sometimes it's really difficult to talk at the same level with the 13 partners that belong to the AYCH project. So now we have with us Oenoni Thomas, the lead partner of the AYCH project, who is going to talk with us about the results of the project.
Hello, I'm delighted to be here today, and thank you very much, Pablo, for the introduction. I'm just going to speak a little bit about some of the outputs, and then, as Pablo said, we're going to hand over to some colleagues to talk in more detail. So here we are, we're talking about the AYCH results of over sort of 3.5, 4 years of work. And just want to share with you quickly these photographs here, because they're not just about decoration, they're just about the essence of the work that we've been doing together, and it's been a privilege to do it. So heading along now, let me show you what there is to do. I'm not normally the feature in in the work we do, so this is interesting for me. So first of all, a little bit about the project, just a quick overview. You can see on the map on the left-hand side the locations of the hubs that we have in the 4 countries. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity to work together. We're all connected by the Atlantic Ocean in this programme through the Interreg Atlantic area. And the idea of the programme has been to support young people in this age bracket of 16 to 30 years. It's quite broad, really, to develop sustainable solutions to the challenges that we share across the Atlantic area. And the focus has been on digital and creative skills, supporting education, business, employment opportunities. And it's been an informal route through in this learning process. So I want to talk today sort of in 3 areas, very, very quickly, about the external factors. The first thing, the external factors that we faced during the lifetime of the project. And I also would like to talk about the project outputs and the summary report. And then just a very, very fleeting look at the financial statement that we have to date. The project has another 2 months to run. So this is a snapshot in time at this moment. So first of all, let's just think about some of the external factors that we faced. We've had a combination of coronavirus, Brexit, economic downturn, and to some extent the declaration of a climate emergency sets us all in this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous contextual common challenge for us all. But despite these challenges, we've continued to focus on the young people. We feel very, very powerfully, and it's actually cumulative, it's grown over the period of time, that we have to find a way to work together and to work with young people. We feel it's our duty. So in about this time last year, actually, we agreed a declaration called the AYCH New World 2020 Declaration, where we decided that we would always have a positive and proactive approach to the challenge of coronavirus. We knew at that stage that it might just impact us for a little while, but we took the decision there and then that we would adopt and adapt our methodologies in order to work in the new space. But as we sit now, a year later, we know that this emergency has taken over a third of the project's length. The other impact that we've had recently has been the end of the transition phase of the Brexit process. And in a way, the fact that we're working virtually has mitigated against that in some ways. But so far, we've met the challenge. But we have to say that in meeting the challenge, we've encountered some increased costs and time in navigating the complexity of borders. And I would just cite one example of that in shipping books, which I know Florent will talk about a bit later on, from the mainland of Europe into the UK. So let's leave that behind, but bear that in mind when we look at the next section. The AYCH project had 10 outputs, but over 50 separate targets, and we worked in 7 different work packages. So actually, it's quite a complex thing to work around and to get your head around. And what we've done during this period of time is we've worked with a deliverables tracker. It's our own tool devised by our partner Space. And in this deliverables tracker, we have tracked every single one of our targets against each one of our partners. We've had a dashboard running, which has allowed us to keep track of where we are. So let's just say a little bit about what outputs are. Outputs are an aggregation normally of a number of targets. So when you see CO28 or CO29 or whatever, it means something in terms of targets. But these first two that I've got here actually happen to be a target and an output in their own right. They map one to one. So these are the targets that we've achieved. And you can see down in the bottom right-hand side of the screen that CO28 relates to new products to market. So this means that we have achieved over 203% of our target of getting new products to market, and 97% of our target for new products to firm. Now, I have to say that we had to develop a flow chart in order to work out the new products to firm. So it's quite a complicated notion, but we're really delighted that we've got 97%. And just to remind you at the moment that we have 2 months to go. So it's not impossible that we will achieve that one. The picture shows you one of the new products to market. It's the Zen Cube, created by a PCA, Plymouth College of Art young person, a UK partner, and this beautiful image there. So the next AYCH outputs are more complicated. These ones are combinations of targets. So CO1 here is a combination of 3 individual targets, but they're all connected to entrepreneurial confidence and co-creation. And so the images here show you businesses which have been set up. We've just chosen one from each of our countries here, one of our nations. So these are all businesses that have come about because of AYCH, and it's absolutely wonderful to find that we've achieved 144% of our target, given the economic landscape, especially in 2020 and 2021. Right. So our AYCH outputs here, P104 and P105, are all about actions and number of participants in our actions for dissemination and capitalization of the project. Now, you know, these look absolutely astronomical numbers, and I have to say that these targets combine, if we were talking about algebra, they combine apples and pears and tomatoes together. They are a real mixture. So in here you will have maybe one event which takes many months and many days of activity to put together, and it's also combined with a social media blog, say, for example. So this is why we've achieved these amazing results here. But the picture shows you one of our posters from our activities in the European Week of Regions and Cities, just as an illustration of the sorts of activity that would be included in these outputs. So here we are, we're on the 4th of our 5th group of outputs. And these ones are related to case studies, pilot actions, policy documents, strategy, and so forth. Now, you can see here that we're in much smaller numbers. Delighted that P101 is 100%. And you can see that with the second dial here, we've got 67% of the target when this was written. But in fact, today we hit 100%, because one of these 3 things here was about the Youth Summit, and the dissemination of results. So in fact, we can, if we could, we could move the dial up to 3 and we could hit 100%. So the example that we've got at the bottom here is one of the tools I know that Florent will talk about a little bit later on, which is our wiki tool. So I'm not going to talk about that in any detail because we'll leave that one up to Florent. And the last two dials, the last two gauges for our outputs relate to case studies and pilot actions and policy documents, strategy and operational instruments. So for example, in here, in OA1, we would have the number of meetings that we've had, the number of transnational creative jams, the number of key enabling technology and enterprise workshops delivered to young people. And so they're really quite complex combinations of things. And we will be able to talk more in detail about each type of target a bit later on. Looking at the images that you have at the bottom of the screen though, we have an example of a creative jam down on the left-hand side in Plymouth, with Plymouth College of Art, but actually in Exeter. We have in the middle, Madeline there in Liverpool at an AYCH steering committee meeting. They're always very interactive, participative meetings. We like to practice what we preach. And in the right-hand side, you can see the latter type of version of meetings that we've had, like we are having today. So we have one more output, which I haven't shared a dial for because it consists of the number of project reports that we have to deliver and the final evaluation report that we submit to the Joint Secretariat. So this output will be fully achieved when we actually get to the end of the project, which finally closes on the 31st of May this year. So moving on from there, just the last thing is just to talk a little bit about the financial situation. This is an indicative statement. So you can imagine that over the last 14 months of the 44 months of the project, our spending profiles have changed considerably. So one of the things that we have to think about is how we have used the funds that we have received. And we believe that despite all of the changes that we will use about 92% of our target, with about an 8% underspend is anticipated, and we'll release that back. But actually at the end of the project, we will produce a full financial report, and we'll be able to see everything in more detail then. So that's me. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Enoni. Now we are going to get serious, or even more serious if possible. During the next few minutes, someone who has been very important to the project, its independent evaluator, will speak to us. That person is still evaluating us today and has done a great job, so at the end of our project, our partners and our employers have a total independent evaluation. His name is your right. Yeah?
There I am. Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking the AYCH team for inviting me to join you all today, and also for their considerable work and support over the past 18 months in which I've been carrying out my evaluation. While importantly, my evaluation has been independent in the sense that any conclusions that I have reached have been my own. It would simply not be possible to complete that kind of work without the assistance and cooperation of the team through what's been an extremely busy and challenging time for everyone concerned. And there are also a great bunch of people who I've really enjoyed meeting and working with. So today, I'm pleased to be able to share with you all a brief summary of the independent evaluation. So as time is short, I'm going to focus on two main areas. Firstly, the purpose, objectives, and methodology of the evaluation, so you can understand what I was trying to achieve and how I did it. And secondly, my key findings and conclusions, both in terms of the intended impacts and the actual impacts. So the objectives, this was the brief for the work, was to assess the impacts of AYCH on project participants, in particular, the many young people who have engaged with the project, the hubs and the communities around them, what we might call their local ecosystems, and then beyond that, wider stakeholders across the regions, the AA regions within which those hubs and communities sit. Inoni has talked primarily about the outputs of the project, so what the team have actually delivered, the number of people that have engaged with or participated in those activities and outputs. And by contrast, the main aim of my evaluation was not to assess the delivery, but the outcomes and the impacts of that delivery. So in order to do that, I set out to find evidence of the intended project benefits. So what were the positive outcomes and impacts that partners wanted to achieve at the start of the project? To what extent might those have changed? It is not impossible and certainly not unprecedented for priorities to change, objectives to change. This is not necessarily a bad thing as long as we understand and manage that. The extent to which those outcomes and impacts have been achieved, and any other project benefits that might also have been achieved. And finally, examples of good practice or lessons learned that could inform future projects and interventions like AYCH. So to find and evaluate that evidence, I used three main research methods. Firstly, desk-based review of information and data already held by the project team and that was created through the lifetime of the project. So that includes background information about the project, how it was designed and planned, media that was produced during the project, the many articles and blogs and videos, looking at some of the monitoring and reporting systems. So Inoni's mentioned some of those, and also feedback stories, case study surveys from participants themselves. The second area of research was my own personal observations. So that began in October 2019 when I attended the steering committee in Angoulême. I then, to the extent possible under lockdown, tried to participate in some events or observe some events and workshops. And of course, they were mainly virtual for most of that period, but it still gave me an insight into the delivery of the project. And then I was able to attend the Transnational Creative Jam, which was coordinated from Santo Tirso, but of course held virtually. And then the third strand of research was direct engagement with the partners and stakeholders. And there were two main strands to that. Firstly, interviews that I held soon after starting my work. That was in November 2019 through to the following January. And they were introductory interviews purely with the project partners. And then more recently, I conducted an online survey, again with the project partners, but also with some wider stakeholders such as employers, universities, local authorities, industry experts, people who had engaged with the project, but as partners and stakeholders rather than as beneficiaries. So in order to evaluate how effectively the project achieved its intended impacts, of course, it was first necessary to understand what those intended impacts were. Some of you may have heard of a concept or a methodology called theory of change, but for those who haven't, so theory of change is a good practice methodology for designing and evaluating projects or other interventions, government policies, for example, or programs, particularly those that are intended to promote or deliver social or societal change. And it focuses on identifying the intended changes or benefits that ultimately need to be delivered for project stakeholders, whoever they are. These are known as outcomes and impacts, and then mapping backwards to identify a series of causally linked preconditions that will be required in order to achieve those. So in other words, what are the activities and the outputs that will need to be delivered in order to achieve the outcomes and impacts? And what are the resources or inputs that will be required to deliver them? And this can be presented as a diagram, which is popularly known as a logic model. This is a logic model that was constructed for the AYCH project, and this didn't exist within the original application, but it was possible to infer it from the materials and from my discussions with project partners, and to gain a consensus with those partners that it described the links between the activity and the results. So on the left in blue, hopefully you can see, and don't worry if you can't read the detail, it's not critical, but you will see there the inputs. Those are the time, energy, investment, funding from ERDF and from other sources, the activities and the outputs, and Ioannis talked about those in some detail. As we move towards the right, you start to see the results and then finally the outcomes and the impacts, and this is where the independent evaluation is focused. And you can see there, I'll just briefly read those out for the benefit of those who can't see the detail of the screen. But there are three main groups of stakeholders. The project participants, for whom the main outcomes could be summarized as enterprise and education awareness and aspiration being raised, creative, technical and enterprise skills being developed, economic and social potential being unlocked, and access to career and education opportunities being improved. And also new products and services are both an output and an outcome of the project. Secondly, for partners and their local ecosystems, this is the lower of the two boxes towards the right, there were three main outcomes. That approaches to youth services be improved, that connections between talent, particularly young talent, and employers are improved, and that collaboration between higher education institutions, non-government organizations, public and private bodies are improved. And then in the longer term and at the widest range, we have what you might call long-term impacts for the Atlantic areas. And the core ones here really are that more young people are able to pursue careers or education in the creative sector, regardless of their background, that unemployment rates are lower, and that local economies are more cohesive, sustainable and balanced, and also that more jobs and businesses are created within the creative sector. One observation that became clear from the very start of my involvement in the project, from talking to partners, was that not all partners were equally concerned with all of those outcomes. So this diagram briefly shows the responses by delivery partners in orange and other stakeholders in sort of blue-green to the question, how important was it to you that each of the following outcomes and impacts be achieved? So they were asked to score or rank each of those outcomes that I've just listed from 0 to 4, 0 being not at all important, 4 being very important. And these are presented in the sliding groups. So the top 5 are the intended outcomes for young participants. The next 3 are those for the local partners and ecosystems. And the 4 at the bottom are the regional longer term impacts. As you will see, there's not a lot of variation between those, but you can see some things being scored higher than others. So for example, you'll see the second one down, development of skills in young participants, was on average seen as the highest priority, the most important outcome from the project, nearly a point higher on average than the improvement of delivery approaches. However, it's important to note that this is a relatively small variation, and on average, all of those outcomes scored at least 3 out of 4. So were ranked as quite or very important by the majority of stakeholders, certainly on average. So in terms of intended outcomes, these were the conclusions that I was able to draw. So firstly, that it is possible to identify a coherent project logic or theory of change. So this is that set of objectives and benefits, stakeholder outcomes and wider impacts, which are causally linked to the activities and the outputs. And this, combined with the shared delivery models, incubation, apprenticeships, and so on, provided the golden thread throughout the project. So it's a coherent logic to the project. Secondly, while all the partners broadly subscribed to that logic, it was also clear that the relative importance of outcomes and impacts varied. And this is depending, understandably, on local and institutional priorities and the context of those organizations, those partners. And I think that was illustrated in the survey responses, which I've just summarized. Thirdly, rather than undermine the rationale or impact of the project, I believe it's fair to say that those differences arguably add to its richness, its diversity, and its future legacy in terms of understanding what methods work or don't work well with different age groups and in different contexts. For example, some partners were working with younger groups, some partners with older groups, some were working with young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, others with undergraduate and graduate students. So overall, the good news at the early stages was that the priorities were well aligned between the delivery partners and their wider stakeholders, albeit with some minor differences. So next, and perhaps more importantly still, what were the actual impacts? Well, it would be impossible to try and convey the full range of impacts in such a short space of time. So I've selected a few examples, and these are drawn from a source of information called the Evidence Library. And this was a database of interviews, case studies, videos, online articles, podcast stories, testimonials, participant feedback, and other material that the partners all collected and shared with me to review independently. So this is based on what I consider to be independently verifiable evidence of outcomes and impacts. It contained over 100 items, many of which each had multiple positive outcomes. And these are just a few examples you may wish to browse, but if you can't see them, again, just to highlight, some of these stories show improved understanding of business and social enterprise. Some of them relate to the development of new skills. So just in these examples, they refer to team working skills, new digital content creation, improved social behaviors, increased confidence, pitching business ideas, or stronger management and leadership skills, and increased aspiration and awareness of future job opportunities. And also importantly, as well as these direct outcomes for young people, confidence, skills, aspiration, there is already evidence of these improvements at individuals leading into positive outcomes for them, such as business creation, education, progression into employment. And then just to balance that, I've also drew a selection of examples in the words of the delivery partners themselves. So where the previous slide were the statements from young participants, this is from the delivery partners. And again, I could have chosen a number of different examples, but here you have examples from all four nations. The case of one young participant who was able to move into work as a junior designer in an innovation consultancy firm. Another who was able to develop a prototype that moved on to have social impact. A variety of other examples there, someone moving into university, others moving into employment in the creative sector. And then this really was an attempt to convey in one image the overall sense that came from that evidence library. And this is a simple word cloud. You'll have seen these before. It was generated by taking all of the participant stories, the summaries of the participant stories in that evidence library, and creating a word cloud where the size of the word indicates how often the word was used. And unsurprisingly, AYCH is a prominent word within that, but you'll also see skills, confidence, experience, ideas coming through strongly within that, as well as it referencing some of the delivery models. And many of you will be aware that there is a project publication that came out recently and only referred to it. So there are plenty of good examples to look at within that of more detailed case studies. This graph summarizes the responses to the online surveys in which project partners themselves were asked to what extent they believed, not I believed, but they believed the outcomes and impacts had been achieved. Again, the outcomes and impacts are in the same order, and you can see those three groupings. The options similarly were not at all. So in orange, you have people saying that they didn't believe that outcome was achieved at all. And then different shades of green, going from yes to some degree, yes to the level intended, so that it achieved the level of impact and outcome that was hoped at the outset, through to yes, even more than intended. And simply put, the darker the green, the more positive the assessment. And as you will see there, universally, it was felt that those top two outcomes were achieved either to the level intended or even more so. Moving down through the list of outcomes as you get to the local and regional, there's less strength of feeling that that success has been achieved, but there are reasons for that that I'll touch upon in my conclusions. But overwhelmingly, I would hope that this graph conveys that there's a good sense that partners feel intended outcomes have been achieved. I asked the same question to a selection of stakeholders. So we approached, as I mentioned, employers, partners, other people who've been involved in the project, in delivering the project, and asked them to what extent they believe the intended outcomes have been achieved. And this groups, those three groups, outcomes for young participants, local stakeholders, and wider regional national impacts. And again, you'll see it, there's an overwhelming sense that the project was successful in delivering those outcomes and impacts. So finally, summarizing my conclusion, I would say firstly that I found strong evidence that positive outcomes have already been achieved for many young participants as a result of the project. In particular, looking at the evidence in the evidence library and the feedback from partners and stakeholders, these all indicate that the project successfully raised awareness and aspiration and contributed to skills development in young people, at least to the level originally intended, and in some cases more so. It's also clear that at least a number of those participants have already progressed into jobs, into training, or education. As Inone's mentioned, delivery is still ongoing, so further positive outcomes can be expected, and even the outcomes of the delivery that's happened may take time to occur. So I haven't sought to quantify many of these outcomes because they will continue to be felt and to be delivered for months and potentially years to come. The partners and the stakeholders identified new connections, collaborations with other stakeholders, new networks and knowledge sharing as positive outcomes that they had obtained from the project. And despite the very difficult circumstances within which the last 12 months of the project has been delivered, I think there's reason to believe that it has to some extent helped to mitigate the negative impacts of COVID-19, at least for many of the young participants, in terms of helping to build resilience, new skills, work digitally, work virtually, work as teams, and so on. And finally, I think it is fair to say that as its legacy, in terms of the lessons learned and good practice shared, it will have and continue to have a role to play in supporting social and economic recovery and future growth within the Atlantic area and potentially within the wider Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, for the great job, and hello, everyone. Some of you maybe remember me, others don't know me. I was in the first event, AYCH in Lugo, and when Jose told me about today, I couldn't say no, because it's very interesting. I was following you during these years, and it's amazing the great job that you made. So today I'm here to speak with the 4 AYCH work package chiefs, and I'm accompanied by Eva, who is the head of organization for the project and who represents Plymouth College of Art in the United Kingdom, Nicolas, the head of capitalization, who represents the Greater Angulum conglomerate in France, Pablo, who represents Vida Lactea, who has led the management of communication, events and training, and easily, not least, on the contrary, Florence Orsoni from L'École de Design Nantes Atlantics, who is in the charge of AYCH Legacy. And that today he will present to us later in his presentation. First of all, I beg you to be brief, since we have little time and we want to hear from you many times. So to begin with, I would like to start with a small intervention where you will tell me what does each area of your work consist of, and very quickly, Eva.
First of all, good morning, everyone. I shall say that the head of organization sounds very serious, but yes, I represent the Plymouth College of Art, and we, as a partner in this project, lead on the management of the operations and technical subcommittee, and the co-creation work package. So in other words, we look after the project deliverables and the work package centered around activities such as local creative jams, business incubation program, residencies, work experience, and new products and services development.
Super, thank you so much. One of the novelties this year from Interact has been the inclusion of companies in the partnership. Here we have one of the two that are in the project, Pacific Stream.
Yeah, okay. So apologies everyone. It seems that we have some kind of technical trouble because it seems that Trini has lost the connection. Actually, it's a bit funny because the question she was doing was aimed to be to me. I guess because she was talking about the private companies in the AYCH project. There are two companies among the partnership of the project. One is Pacific Stream, which is located in Liverpool, and the other one is us, which is Vida Lactea, located in Lugo in Spain. And well, this is the first time that in the Interact program, companies are allowed to be part of the partnership. It has been, in my humble opinion, as a company, as an employee of a company, it has been a good movement because, well, of course, private companies doesn't have the number of contacts and the economical support of local entities like city councils, for example, but we are way more flexible and agile when buying goods and developing activities. So I think that we are a good add to the partnership because we can speed up the project when needed, and we also could be involved in other ways in which local authorities are not doesn't have the possibility of doing it because of the structure, the internal structure that they have. Okay, so it seems that we have lost connection with Trini. So I will continue her task at the round table. So in the educational field, we have with us one of the persons in charge of the ideology of the project, which is Florent Orsoni. And Florent, we would like to know what contributes in the AYCH project. Unlike other educational projects in youth, what makes the AYCH project so interesting, so fresh regarding education?
Thank you, Pablo. It's a pleasure to be there for the final presentation and the final meeting. I'm Florent Orsoni. I'm head of City Design Lab at l'École de Design Nantes Atlantique. And in fact, I am in charge also on 100 students from 10 different nationalities, which are in master degree. And the role of the Design Lab is to invent a new way for education, new practice, etc. So this project, of course, fulfill all this way, this mindset. For us in the design school, and I will give you this feedback, AYCH was the part of the curriculum, and in fact, our students had to build tools. The students were facilitators in some sessions, and we try also some entrepreneurship, etc. So, in fact, with the AYCH project, we build another mindset, and it was important because we worked with our students as a professional team. In fact. 100 students were involved in that project and more, in fact, but directly involved more than 100. And we worked as a professional team to build this kind of tools, to build these facilitations. We go to Angoulême, in fact, to every hub to facilitate some meetings. And the results were not so tangible. There were more confidence and self-awareness. And they produce this kind of tools for animation. They also discovered Miro, which was used during the whole project during the lockdown. And in fact, we have this kind of, Pablo, to answer to your question, in fact, this project changed a little bit our mindset on education, etc. I will give you a concrete example. When I saw some prototypes from Vida Lactea, for example, because in the AYCH Ocean, I saw that, and it was from a designer perspective with poor quality. And I had this discussion with José, with Vida Lactea, but also with some of the partners, some other partners. I think about Richard, etc. And in fact, the results was not the point. The point was maybe the dialogue, the experience that we build for these young people. And I understood maybe, and I would put this on the table, that education is more an experience than a program. And AYCH also was more an experience than a program, in fact, because we change a little bit the rules, we adapt at every time, like Joe said. And this is a shift, in fact, in the project, when you understand that it's a question of experience, to build education as an experience. And we have to conceal these different approaches into experience. These different approaches with the vision of Vida Lactea, the vision of Santo Tirso also, which were more open-minded, if I can say, than our academic vision with the Plymouth College of Art. And we had to open, to change a little bit some programs and some of our mindset as academic. And it was really interesting also the question of vocabulary, incubation, internship, etc. We have to redesign, in fact, the project altogether. And more than following a program, in fact, we have to redesign education. And education, for me, the change of mindset is that education is more a meaningful experience that build people along with self-confidence, trust, openness. And I think education should go towards this. And we have some milestones, some cornerstone in the AYCH Legacy, which I will present later, that will maybe help you to build this new utopia. So this is what we learn from this project in education.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Florent. Unfortunately, it seems that we cannot recover connection with Trini yet. Well, you know, it's what happens with technology. Sometimes it's unreliable, not like the hubs of the AYCH project, which are always working quite well. Well, the next question will be to our partner in Grand Angoulême, to Nicolas. So we would like to know what is capitalization. If you could explain to us what is the capitalization of a project, and why has this aspect been given so much importance in the AYCH project?
Thanks, Pablo. Bonjour, everyone. So what is capitalization? This is a good question. To me, capitalization is a process to learn from our history during the project and to keep it alive after the project. So in the AYCH project, it can be synthesized in 3 steps. The first one is to get inspiration from similar project that is not AYCH. It's called the benchmark. The second step is to be able to identify our own good practices in our different actions and to continue to do better in a positive way. And the last one is to put our history, our good practices somewhere in a specific virtual toolbox that we call the wiki, to be able to use it during the project, and to give it to all the stakeholders who would like to duplicate our actions or our project. So why is so important? Because we have 14 partners. We are schools, we are administration, we are enterprise, we are association. We are from 5 different countries, so we're so different. So we need to understand each other if we want to work together, and we have to learn from our different experience, good or bad, and to adapt ourselves if it's necessary. In the AYCH project, we wanted to use a creative way to capitalize. So with École de Design de Nantes and with Philippine May, who is here, and thanks to a data collection process from all the partners, we produced a series of podcasts highlighting the particularities of all the partners and the good practices from all the partners. So you can find it in the website platform and on the wiki, which is part of the legacy of the project.
Yeah, okay, really interesting. Thanks a lot, Nicola. We would like to know the opinion that the lead partner has about how the AYCH project has developed its activity despite the pandemic situation that started at the beginning of last year.
Yes, this time last year, none of us knew what we were facing in the future. We had a situation that even the scientists and the governments and everyone else didn't really understand. But I think we all knew, as I said in my outputs presentation at the beginning of today's meeting, that we had to take some decisions very early, because to plan activities for our young people is time consuming. It takes resources, it takes time to do. So we had already things in the pipeline that we were going to have to fix, rethink, find different ways. So for us, the pandemic was horrible. It was horrible for everybody. It was undetermined. It was going to have an impact because most of our project is about getting people together, giving them experiences in different places, working in teams, working collaboratively, the fun of actually experiencing, being in a different place together, being in a different culture. So it was going to be something that we had to grasp. I have to say, throughout the AYCH experience, we've had 4 declarations. We've sat down on 4 occasions and we've made collaborative decisions. We've all signed up to them, so that we've all moved forward knowing what it is that we're attempting to do and why, importantly, why we are doing what we're doing. So the pandemic, having all the negative impacts that it did have some positive ones. It made us look at how we could work, how we could deliver, and work with young people, regardless of their location. And that will be something I'm sure that Florent will mention when we're thinking about what happens next. Because where I live, certainly in the southwest of England, we have young people, we have whole tiny communities that are nowhere near resources, and public transport's not great. So having this experience, this last third of our project, where we're looking at remote working, we can actually be more inclusive than we might have been otherwise. So there are swings and roundabouts, there are benefits, and but actually at the end of this last 14 months of the project, I think that it just shows that we as partners have learnt from the young people that we work with. We've learnt from them that, you know, the digital space can be creative. We've learnt from them that we can maintain relationships in a meaningful way. We are two-dimensional today, but all of the people that we've worked with have worked on this presentation. You know, we have all worked for the last week on the Youth Summit in a highly collaborative way, in a highly creative way. So we just have to look at the positive sides of it. Having said that, we all look forward to the day. We all look forward to the day when we will actually be able to meet again and work in the same room.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the answer, Oenoni. We have one question in the chat, and because we have some minutes remaining for this roundtable, I think it would be interesting to know the answer that all of us would have for this question, which is, what was the most unexpected result achieved? So,
I will
yeah,
maybe say that in fact, when we start the project, the vision that we had is that we will create some companies, some new startups, etc., etc. It was, I think, the vision which was also at the beginning, and I was expecting that AYCH project could help us to start this kind of process. And in fact, the unexpected result is that not in terms of companies created, and the most important things to measure, which was difficult to measure, is that in fact, for students especially, it was self-confidence growing, self-confidence driven also. And the design way, the design approach for them was more into collaboration, helping, facilitation, etc. And we developed, in fact, this kind of skills which were not expected. And in fact, we had non-direct impact, and we had some students and now professional, more ready for cooperation, etc. And they took new jobs which were not directly in the field of design, and that is for me one of the most important and the most unexpected results for students, is that in fact we expect something and another thing occurred, and it was clearly a new design way, a new way to design and to practice the design jobs, in fact.
And very quickly, I can say that an unexpected result was the link between people, and even during this COVID situation, we continue to find new solutions, and thanks to the design, we continue to create new tools, and it was just possible to continue the project and to propose to young people activities and link them with in a virtual way. So this is a good point at the end.
Yeah, just to quickly build on all these thoughts. And also, actually, I think Inoni answered this question in a way that we actually delivered 2 very big, important events online, and actually, you know, proved that digital spaces, virtual spaces can be very creative. So I think it was unexpected and unforeseen, yet delivered very successfully.
yeah. And what's your opinion, Oenoni?
Well, I was just looking at, I was just reading actually Carlos's question at the time that you were talking there. But yes, Eva is right. We've had a transnational creative jam, and we've had the Youth Summit this week, and it's been an absolute privilege to be part of them. As I mentioned yesterday, these events, these activities are where you get your energy. They are the lifeblood of the project. So away from the individual impacts, when you're working with young people, as we have done this last 4 days, developing the Agenda 2030, it's actually energizing. I have to say, all the team are exhausted because we've been working non-stop for you know, a month or whatever. But sorry.
Yeah.
But sorry about that. That's probably somebody asking me how to fill in a spreadsheet. But we have worked really, really hard. And as Eva said, we've had two events, and we've had to step away from thinking, how do we do what we did before online? We've had to start from scratch and say, well, what works online, and how do we design from that point? So it hasn't been about, you know, on day one we normally do this and we do it this way. We've actually had to rethink the space, rethink what's possible, rethink the technology, and it's been a wonderful experience. Going back to Carlos's question there, though, about what is the impact of COVID right now on young people you are working with. I think maybe partners that actually work, I was going to say partners that work directly with young people are probably the better ones to answer that question. But of course, none of us have been working directly with young people. And I think that the problems that they have now are obviously the downturn in the economy. Lots of the sectors that young people would normally work in have been particularly badly hit by COVID restrictions, so that even part-time jobs, opportunities for part-time jobs, opportunities for internships have been lost, opportunities for even, you know, networking, physical events, the opportunity to bump into somebody or to know someone. So a lot of this has had to go online. Some of our internships that we've done have been completely remote. And as I'm sitting here looking at Eva at the top of the screen, you know, our partner here, Marion, who was the lead partner for the Youth Summit this week, I've never met them in person. You know, it's amazing that we've worked so closely every day, but we've never met in person. And we have young people who've done internships, who've done incubation, who've done collaborative work completely online. And we need, I think, employers to perhaps rethink not just the way they interview people, because they can do that online, but we need them to think about what are the skills that our young people are developing through this experience. Young people will come out of the end of COVID with a different set of skill sets, which I have to say are probably much better than a lot of their employers have. You know, I know in this project, I'm the one that's not going to mute my microphone or unmute my microphone or work, you know, the chat, the video and everything simultaneously, which young people will do. And being able to establish relationships remotely, manage time, work when things work for them, create connections. I think these skills need to be recognized by employers going forward. So they need to start thinking about their recruitment, what they want from their workforce, because it's not going to necessarily fit the profile that they had before we had a pandemic.
I just want to add something with to answer to Carlos. In fact, what was important for me as responsible for a design lab and for a school, on a school, it was important to have the same level of degree and not to decrease our degree. And what I want to say is that AYCH was helping us a lot during the first lockdown, which was really hard because we keep on working. We keep on working on projects for this new world, and especially with a strong study case, which was AYCH project. And in fact, we design tools, events online, and we designed the Bright Mirror, for example, and thanks to AYCH, we had this concrete field. And we helped with this, and also to the openness of partners, which work in confidence with us, helped us to raise this new model of, after the declaration 2020, this new online model of AYCH. And it was very good, and it was a clear opportunity for students to adapt to the situation. And so they had all internships with this new vision, as Ainoni said, because they were able to manage distance and this kind of tools, the Miro, etc. And we had also projects in the school that with this new possibility. And I want to say that it would not have been possible without AYCH and without the opportunities and without the openness from the partners to try some new tools and to try it directly. So our students had a kind of expertise with that, and we gain an expertise with this, and I want to underline this. Jobs are more difficult, to be honest, in the situation now, but we hope that the situation will come more normal, and the company will find also new vision, a new possibility to go with confidence into the future. But for the moment, the situation with job is more complicated. They have just part-time missions, and it's more part-time, etc. For the moment.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks a lot, all of you, for all the different answers that you provided in this roundtable. So now we are going to jump into the AYCH Legacy's presentation.
For around 4 years, the Atlantic Youth Creative Hubs project of Interreg Atlantic area has supported and empowered hundreds of young people through the project's hubs, located in 4 countries of the Atlantic area. Thanks to 12 hubs and hundreds of multidisciplinary experts, as well as local and international jams, more than 140 young people found or created jobs, and more than 370 incubated an idea through the project. The pandemic that began in early 2020 could not stop the development of the project, which was promoted enthusiastically by those who originated it, young people. Through virtual platforms, dozens of training sessions, events, activities, and exchanges took place, uniting the different countries through the network international and multicultural actions. Making clear the power of youth and its importance for the future of the world, the Atlantic Youth Creative Hubs project does not really end, but rather becomes a new beginning, in which young people take forward what they have learned throughout this journey of collaboration and mutual knowledge exchange.
Acredito que o projeto deveria continuar, pois ele abraça e reúne jovens de diversas partes do mundo, com um grande potencial para que juntos mudemos e diversifiquemos o futuro.
I think the future of AYCH is living in a society in which all these socially and environmentally minded prototypes designed by young people come to life.
Le projet AYCH devrait continuer car il est important de motiver et faire participer les jeunes qui représentent l'avenir de nos sociétés et les pousser dans leur vocation entrepreneuriale. Et puis l'aspect créativité du projet est très important, je trouve, car il met en lumière que c'est un domaine clé dans tous les secteurs d'activité.
Yo considero que el proyecto AYCH debe continuar porque es una manera de apoyar los proyectos de los jóvenes y al mismo tiempo ver un impacto social y ambiental en el mundo en el que vivimos actualmente.
The Atlantic Youth Creative Hubs project should continue because it guides young people through their professional careers, building bridges between international youngsters and experts, pushing them to think out of the box. Plus, it is funny.
Creo que é importante que proxectos como AYCH continúen para seguir dotando a xuventude de ferramentas transversais que poden aplicar tanto nos seus estudos, traballos, así como novas formas de relacionarse dentro desta nova sociedade que está surdindo.
Pour moi, la poursuite de AYCH, c'est de maintenir les partenariats entre les partenaires, parce qu'on a tissé des liens très forts au cours des 4 années, et de poursuivre cette réflexion autour du futur des jobs créatifs et en quoi la créativité peut être une solution pour un monde meilleur demain.
So it's time for me to present AYCH Legacy, and I'm very honored to do this and to share this with you. And I just want to emphasize that these boys are our main legacy, and this is the big message that I want to put there. So AYCH Legacy is what is the future? What works? How can we go on working? How can we spread the AYCH model? So we have a few tools. We have the website tools, first of all, which is AYCH 2030, which is to diffuse, and it's a kind of platform that brings you to the Declaration of Brest, that brings you also to the publication. And we have this publication, which is a better way to understand the AYCH cornerstone, which is detailed, which is with a lot of information inside, and a lot of scheme, a lot of photo, etc. So it's a way to diffuse. Another is the wiki, as mentioned before. And in the wiki, we wanted to underline some case studies, some tools. And what is important is that these tools are open source. And it's important, this philosophy of open source, because it's 4.0 open source, which means that you can use it, change it, adapt it. And it's very important to have all together these tools on the wiki, which are downloadable, and these case studies with precise elements, step by step, how to raise a creative jam, for example, how to raise some international creative jam. So I can say that if you want to go deeper into the technical things, you can have also the wiki. And another thing is the progression desk, progression support desk, to say that. And in the progression desk, for example, it's a kind of live also, because we need to have the soul, the spirit of AYCH, and we need to exchange, and there is also a possibility to join all of the partners, all of the hubs, to go deeper and to explain how it works. In fact, we have this kind of multi-channel, in fact, strategy which will help to deliver the tools, the message, the methods, etc. We have also the 30 declaration, the 30 recommendation for Creative Europe that we presented yesterday. So this is possible to adapt the AYCH model. And these tools are the beacons that could help to draw a kind of path, and a new path, a new way. But most important of this, you will have these tools, which are the legacy of AYCH, but there is also, most important of this, a vision that have to drive these tools, that have to make it work. And in fact, without that vision, we couldn't have achieved that project. And I will just say that we have 3 cornerstones in AYCH Legacy. We have tools and cornerstone. The first is AYCH Legacy is a message on education. We share this with my friend Roy here, and I know he's a specialist in education, Roy from Liverpool, and there is an urgent need to be more inclusive, to adapt, and maybe to change the place where education takes place. And I encourage you to see what is going on in Pacific Stream, for example. And this should be in self-confidence and be more use-driven. And I think this is the importance of AYCH Legacy. This is the first cornerstone, the message of AYCH on education. The second is also in the approach to encourage diversity, to be flexible and to adapt. And I think one of the key of the success in this AYCH process is this dialogue, this important dialogue that we had between each other with this kind of European language, you know, and we try to make this understandable. And I want to see we have some key person in this dialogue, and I want to say that people like Einoni are key people to encourage this and to raise this. And this is also the legacy, the constant dialogue, and the way that what I want to say also in AYCH Legacy is that AYCH is anchored, nourished by European values, the way to collaborate, to build something resilient through the crisis that we met. And because AYCH is driven by values, by utopia. And what I want to say is that despite the crisis, we accelerate our activities. And this is the most important legacy, because no doubt that after this crisis, in fact, it will drive us to a new world. And there is a thing that AYCH, in fact, leaves us maybe a method, because it worked, in fact. And the method, an approach that could be a way to bring these new ideas that we need into life, because we have an urgent challenge. We have to build a new post-COVID world, in fact. And we have to find another way, because we know that the way that we had before there was no issue. So I hope that AYCH Legacy could be one of the stars that will guide us towards a new path. And we will have you will have, every one of you, to co-design, not to take these tools, but to co-design, to make your own path to that. And you have the element, the material disseminated there, but don't forget the spirit, what is beyond that. And we are in the darkest time, I think, in the world history, but we have also here with AYCH Legacy a fabulous opportunity to change. And when it's dark enough, we can see stars. And I have no doubt that AYCH Legacy is one of these stars. And it could help to take a way of cooperation, of knowledge sharing, of idea spreading, and most of all, youth-oriented, like we did the Youth Summit. And we take the challenge to say, okay, the floor is open to youth, and we'll take your recommendation, we'll take your vision. And this vision, I think we need a vision. We need to be maybe to re-embrace the European utopia, the European dream, the European vision. And I think we have this opportunity, and I hope that AYCH Legacy could be this star in the darkest times that we live now. And this is one of my and I hope this could be some cornerstone disseminated there. But please don't forget what drives us: this vision, this shared vision, this shared utopia, this shared dream of a new future.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Florent, for the presentation. The AYCH Legacy's tools and results are really interesting. The book actually is quite good too. So before ending today's meeting, I would like to thank you all for being here today with us. And would also like to thank all the partnership, all the members that made possible this project to be real. Since it started 4 years ago. So we would like to thank Ashton Community Trust. We would like to thank the Metropole of Brest, Pacific Stream, Plymouth City Council, the County of Devon, also Plymouth College of Art. We would like to thank l'École des Design Atlantique, and also the City Council of Gijón, the Metropole of Grand Angoulême, Atlantic Cities, the Cámara Municipal de Santo Tirso, and last but no, of course, I was forgetting space. And last but not least, we would like to thank Vida Lactea for being part of this partnership. So that's being all for today. Have a good weekend, and please take care of yourselves.